Good morning, everyone. It is bright and early. Well, it is here on the West Coast anyway. I don't know. Well, it's not even that bright and early. I've been up for a while, but I wanted to come in, welcome in and welcome back. If this is your, if you're returning or if this is your first time, welcome in. I'm stumbling over my words this morning because man, I got a word. My God is so good. And I'm about to give y'all a testimony as part of our 31 Days of Prevention series because, you know, I say every time that this is about information, inspiration, and motivation to increase awareness and prevent future and ongoing domestic violence. But a lot of times it ends up being information kind of wrapped in a little bit of inspiration. Today, this is about motivation. This is about moving you forward. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is DrMarciBatiste. I'm the executive director of 9 Seconds, which is a progressive nonprofit organization with a heart-centered mission towards domestic violence prevention. And we take a non-traditional approach. And when you understand who I am as the founder and the executive director, you'll kind of understand why the approach is non-traditional, because a lot of what I do is non-traditional. But let me tell you, baby, listen, my God is so good. He's so good to me. My bestie always says, God loves me like, whoa, listen, I'm about to tell y'all how he moves in life, right? How he moves specifically in my life, and how when you start moving with faith and operating in a place of obedience to what you're called to do, all the pieces start fitting together, and you might not know it in the middle, right? So when you're going through it, you may not necessarily know it. So this is what happened to me. Yesterday, I was out doing rideshare, and was finishing up. It was getting kind of late, but I still was gonna drive for maybe about another hour or two. I stopped for gas and whatever, and I ended up looking at a YouTube pop-up. A suggested thing popped up on my YouTube while I was flipping while the gas was pumping. And the title of the YouTube, it was a pastor, it was a guest pastor, and the title of the YouTube just said marked. That's all it said. It just said marked. And it was on the page. I follow Elevation Church on YouTube, and this video was on Elevation's page, which meant this pastor was guest preaching at Elevation for whatever reason. I didn't think too much of it, but I started to play the video while I was waiting for the gas, and he was talking about when you're marked by God, right? And I didn't bring it in here, but I have a sticky note on my bathroom, and I'm going to come back to that. But he was talking about when you're marked by God, right? And what he said was, when you're marked by God, you are anointed before you're positioned. He said that you are appointed in private. In other words, the mission that God has for you isn't for everybody else to see or understand. And I have a little sticky note in my bathroom that says, you know, I talk about my winning season, right? And a sticky note says, this is your winning season on one note. And the second one says, you don't have to explain to anybody what God is doing in your life, right? So I look at that message every morning, but I start watching this video yesterday, and what he said, your opportunity is buried in your obedience. Your opportunity is buried in obedience. And he had me hooked. I was hooked. I had to hear more, because something started to click inside of me where I was like, this is important. This is important. You need to pay attention. So I didn't go back on to rideshare anymore that night. I started watching the video, and I started heading home, and I'm listening to him. I'm listening to what he's talking about, and I was just like, I was so moved, because one of the things that he said, I think he said it in there, or maybe it just came, I don't know, but I think he says this in the video. He says, people call you by what you do and what you've been through, but God calls you by the plans he has made for you. And when I heard him say that, I was like, boom, like light bulbs, like stars, sparks start flying. Because for me, that's from Jeremiah 29:11. And I'm going to tell you why all of this stuff matters, guys. I'm going to tell you why this all matters, because my God is so good. This matters because in 2013, I wrote my first book, Journey to Find Your Butterfly Potential. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't know nothing about writing a book. I was just starting out as a speaker. I just had my first speaking mentor, and I was lost. But what it says in here on page 25, I don't know if y'all can see this, Jeremiah 29:11. Jeremiah 29:11. So that specific scripture, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Yes, Mello, Jeremiah 29:11. And I know that means, that's why you and I were soul sisters. Like, I know that's important to you too. This is in 2013, y'all. I was just starting my faith walk. I was just starting to move in spaces where I wasn't comfortable, where I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. So coming back to this video I start watching, your opportunity is buried in your obedience. And I've talked for the last few years about this faith walk that I have, right? And how important it is and all this kind of stuff. So in the video, Pastor Michael Todd, he says, so he puts on the screen Proverbs 3:5, and it said, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, right? That's what the faith walk has always been. So then I'm gonna get through this, I promise y'all, but I'm just this morning. So that was a big deal. So then I'm starting to write down like all these pieces of this puzzle. This faith walk that I was on really was a walk of obedience, but I didn't recognize it as that. I didn't recognize it as obedience until today. Until today is when I recognize it as obedience. Whew. So this morning, I'm flipping through my Facebook memories, and I see a video that I did in 2019 when I moved to Utah, and was talking about my faith walk and why I was in Utah and all that kind of stuff. Well, that literally was what, 2021, 2 years ago to the day, same day, right? My God, it's so good. Listen. So 2 years ago, I'm doing this video and I'm talking about why I'm in Utah. So then I'm thinking about what I had watched last night on the video with Pastor Todd, and I'm thinking about what he was talking about, and your opportunity is buried in your obedience. And then I start thinking about faith is obedience. Faith is simply just doing and not asking why. It's not questioning what you're called to do, right? In other words, faith says, I'm just going to do what I'm called to do, and I'm going to let God do him. Okay? Mind you, I'm just going to let God do him. But that's hard to do when you're in a place of comfort. You're in a space where, you know, it might not be exactly how you want it to be, but it's all right. You good. You straight, right? Whew. You're approved in private. You're approved in private. And your opportunity is in your obedience. So now let me walk you through what the opportunities and the obedience walk and my faith walk look like. Look, what God calls you by the plans he has made for you. People call you by what you've been through, what they see you do, who they think you are. But God, when you got here, he had plans for you, right? That's what he calls you by. That's what he's focused on. He sees what's inside. He sees what's down on the inside of you, what you don't even sometimes see about yourself, about your abilities and your capabilities. When you're called, you're anointed, you're appointed, he already knows you got the juice. It's a matter of, will you follow the steps to execute on what he's already put down on the inside of you, right? So now we're going to talk about, I'm going to link this all in to 9 Seconds, which is my domestic violence nonprofit. I started one years ago, back in 2015, I think. Brave Foundation. Brave Foundation never got off the ground. Like, I worked in it and I did some things, but I never really birthed it, right? But it was there. So this has always been my domestic violence work, my mentorship with children, financial literacy, like all these things are all moving in this space where I'm not seeing them as linked things. I don't see them as going together until now. Okay, so this is why I'm excited this morning. So this is what the faith walk looked like. This is obedience. So in 2019, I packed up everything I had in Arizona and I moved to Texas. I moved to Dallas. And I thought that when I moved to Dallas, the mindset I had was I'm just over it. I'm over entrepreneurship. I'm over Arizona. I'm over Phoenix. I'm just over it. And I mean, I have a training program called I'm Over It. So like when I tell you, like I feel this in my spirit, in my soul, I'm over it, right? So I thought when I left Phoenix and I went to Dallas that I was just going to be able to coast, right? Got a job, went back to corporate. I'm like, I'm over it. Started working for Bank of America. I'm over it, right? I'm not doing entrepreneurship no more. I'm not doing the foundation anymore, but my core is the domestic violence work. That's what I get impassioned about. That's like the only thing that I'm super passionate about. And that's sat in my soul and has stayed there. And that's the one thing that I feel like if I've trained for anything, that's the thing, right? But I'm not doing it anymore. And then I said, okay, well, when I got to Texas, I was like, okay, but if I do it, I'm going to do it different. So I'm going to start working with schools. So now I can marry my love for mentoring children and teaching children with the DV work. That seems to be okay. But again, I didn't really put a whole lot behind it. So then I had an opportunity to accept a job in Salt Lake City. So I got in Dallas in March of 2019. By October of 2019, I was moving to Salt Lake. I ain't never been to Salt Lake City, Utah my whole entire life. It was not even on my radar of places that exist. Didn't know nothing about the place, but I got an amazing job opportunity that paid a ton of money. So I was like, we out. So I go to Salt Lake. And when I got to Salt Lake, everybody was like, you're crazy. You've lost it. This is too much even for you, Marcy. It's too much. But here I am. I'm planted. I'm in Salt Lake. I'm on a contract there for at least 3 months. Turns out it ended up being a 9-month contract. I'm doing whatever, but I'm not doing any entrepreneurship for the most part. I still do motivational stuff occasionally, but did a little bit of speaking, but really not engaging entrepreneurially. What I understand now looking back is that's not why I was there. That wasn't what I was there for. My call and my obedience to go to Salt Lake had nothing to do about my entrepreneurship. It was about preparation. It was about preparation because what happened was, see, sometimes you got to be separated from what's convenient, what's comfortable for you. So when I left Arizona, basically my whole life was here in Phoenix. And so when I went to Dallas, I had family there and a few friends there, but I didn't have a life there, right? So there was a separation that took place when I went from Phoenix to Dallas. Then when I went from Dallas to Salt Lake, the separation became isolation because I had nothing there. I had nothing. I had no one. When I went there, the first month I lived in a hotel because the transition happened so fast and I had to be there for work so quickly. I didn't even have time to find a place. So the first month that I was in Salt Lake, I lived in a hotel. Isolation. Have you ever lived in one room? Isolation. And then when I finally got a place there, like 3.5 weeks after I'd been there, It was a furnished studio on the top of this house with these adorable little, my little landlord and landlady lived downstairs, and I was in this amazing part of Salt Lake, a little artsy district called 9th and 9th. The environment was good. Then the pandemic hits, right? I was completely isolated, you guys. I was completely isolated. And the more people said I was crazy, the more I started to believe maybe this was a little bit crazy. Maybe I wasn't supposed to do that, and maybe I should have thought it through a little bit more. But now I'm here. But I'm making really good money, and I like the job that I'm doing. It was a great training position. I was training banks in California. It was great. It was isolation, though. And so what happens, so separation takes you away from what you're used to. Isolation then forces you to be alone with yourself, with your thoughts, with God, and to start processing, right? So the video that was in my memories from that period, it was on this day in 2019. I was in Salt Lake. I had been there maybe 3 days at that point. And I was watching the video this morning on the heels of the message that I listened to last night and the notes that I had made about my journey. And I was talking in there about the isolation that I felt and how you have to, sometimes he's gotta separate you, then he's gotta isolate you so that you can just focus on him. Because sometimes if you birth something in the middle of a comfort zone, you're gonna think that it's just all you and you did it on your own. But sometimes God's greedy and he wants the credit for it, right? He wants to get his props just like the rest of us do. So I had to be separated from all the noise of my comfort zone. And then I also, when I got to Dallas, I needed to see some things. There was some things there that had been left open that I just kind of needed to see, right? So then when I went to Salt Lake, I was isolated. I had time to process everything that I had seen and experienced and my choices throughout my entire life, but particularly the last few years. So that isolation time was good. It was like I was in a place where I had no choice but to rely on my faith, right? There's nobody else there. Like, no family, no nothing. Like, I barely know my coworkers. I finally met one friend. That was really the only really close friend that I had a couple acquaintances through work, but really just one solid friend came out of that the whole time I was there. So that isolation piece was good. And then, when my contract was done, I went back to Texas. And when I went back to Texas, I thought I was going back because I still had a lease there. But what I understand now, looking back, I was sent back to clean up some stuff. I had to clean up some of the unresolved business that I had. I had to clean up. So the things that I was shown there, then the things that I processed with that information while I was in Utah, I had to go back then and finally clean it up, right? And that's what I'm talking about, you guys. It's your opportunities are in your obedience. And so I went back to Texas. I was there for maybe another 9 months or a year. But I still not doing the entrepreneurship. I had to just focus on that cleanup process. I had to focus on the faith walk. I had to focus on, and at that point, I'm still not really feeling the call, right? And I've never even understood what that was until it happened to me, right? I never understood it. So I'm figuring my lease is up. I'm going to move to Las Vegas because I've never been to Vegas. I mean, I've been to Vegas hundreds of times, but I've never lived in Las Vegas. I missed the sunshine. I missed the palm trees. California was too expensive, so San Diego was off the table. So I'm going to go to Las Vegas. It's similar in climate as Phoenix, but it's not Phoenix again because I don't want to go back to where I've been to. Boom, disruptor. I get an opportunity here. And when I tell you I tried to negotiate my way into accepting the opportunity, but not living here, but it didn't work. And so I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go to Phoenix. I'm going to give it a year and a half, and we'll see. Opportunity is buried in your obedience, right? So I come back to Phoenix, and I've been back now 7 months. I think I came back the beginning of March of this year. So this, we're talking about, this is a 2-year period of time, right? Every single year I assign, at the end of 1 year, I assign a theme for the next year. And so the themes are assigned before anything's ever happened. I don't know what that year is going to look like, but I usually figure out the theme for it sometime in the 4th quarter, typically. So in 2018, my theme for 2019 was Experience Life Unedited. Experience Life Unedited. That was the theme for 2019. I moved to Dallas, to Salt Lake, back to Dallas, all in 2019 into 2020, right? My theme for 2020 was harvest time. And that's when I ended up that's when the pandemic happened. That's when I was in Utah. That's when I started I was in isolation. I was in the harvest. Like, people think that the harvest time is when you take from and you benefit from and you get your bounty. But really, I'm from Iowa. Harvest time is when you start digging and you're turning the soil and you're planting the seeds and you're doing the hard work. Like, and then once you've done all that, then you can start reaping the rewards, right? So that was the theme for that year. And then when I was then for Texas for this year, when I was in Texas, my theme for this year for 2021 was make room. And so y'all seen the hashtag make room 2021. I didn't know what I was making room for. I didn't know if I was making room. I don't know what that was about, but it was just like make room. That was the theme for 2021. So I get back to Phoenix, and within a few months, the opportunity that I accepted here, that's all going really well. But I'm feeling this pull. I'm feeling this calling back to the DV work, but to take it in another direction, to take it deeper and farther and more transparently than I'd ever taken it before. And at first I was like, I thought, well, I'll just renew. This isn't about restarting what you already started. That's not what your calling is. Your calling is to create it now with all the information that you have and the work that you've done in that isolation process, right? So when I start thinking about it, that was literally the birth of 9 seconds. Was every 9 seconds a woman is abused or assaulted in this country. That's a staggering statistic. It's an absolutely staggering statistic. But even then, I still didn't really know what I was going to do with it, right? But I was feeling this sense of urgency. And I see Jalen, she's on here. Like, this sense of urgency to do something, to take all the passion and all the gifts that God's given me and to pour that into something that's going to save other people, right? Like I said, I've been doing the DV work since it happened to me in 2012. So the work wasn't the thing. It's how you go about the work. And so what I realized was the last time I tried to do a lot of things by myself, I didn't have a team. I was just trying to kind of fly under the radar with it, right? And now it's just like, no, this is not fly under the radar stuff. This is the calling. This is the appointment. People call you by what you've been through. So they might call you a victim. They might call you a survivor. They might call you a whole lot of things because they're calling you by what you've been through. But God calls you by the plans he's made for you. And so I had done, I don't know, I did something weeks ago or maybe a month ago that I feel like I've been training for this all my life. And so then when I started thinking back and I started looking at all the stuff I've been through, back to my childhood, because we talk about generational systems and all that kind of stuff. I started breaking all those things down. And literally, I can pinpoint to you training opportunities and opportunities that I had to either obey or not. And I can tell you in those moments whether if I was being obedient, they typically turned out much better than if I was not being obedient, right? And not to say that the domestic violence was necessarily supposed to happen per se, but you're sent here with an assignment. So although I don't think it was supposed to happen, by what the plans he had already made for me were, it was something I had to go through to prepare me for what I was going to be called at some point to do. And so it's funny because I started thinking, and I think even my frame on my, so trash people, the frame on my social media says winning season. Well, that's 2022's theme. It's on my bathroom mirror. And so we're already moving in that. We're moving in that space. But I share all this to say that sometimes when God is moving in your life, you might not even know it's him. You might think that you're just making choices based off of things that are presented to you, right? But sometimes you're given an opportunity or a choice to say yes to some things that might be scary, to say yes to some things that mean you have to step way outside your comfort zone. You have to say yes to doing some of the cleanup. Like when I went back from Utah back to Dallas, from Salt Lake back to Dallas, that was to clean up. It was to clean up some stuff. I had to get some stuff out the way, deal with some things, and then he brought me right back here to Phoenix. I didn't want to come here. But I'm so glad I did, right? Because I can see it now. He brought me back here where it started to do the work. Are y'all, drop a heart if y'all tracking with me on this. Like, he brought me back where it started. This is where I was assaulted, but I went all those places to come back here to start 9 seconds, to do the work, to heal other people. That's how good my God is. I didn't even know, I didn't recognize, I didn't realize that's why he was bringing me back here. And when I tell you the amazing things that are happening as a result of just being willing to be obedient and to do that faith walk. People told me I was crazy. They told me I was crazy so many times. I started to believe it. But when I would get in these, I would have these moments where I'm just like, I'm just going to say yes. I'm going to figure it out later. And so many times when I say yes, things work out. And so he brought me not to where I wanted to be, because I didn't want to come back to Phoenix. He didn't bring me back to where I wanted to be. He brought me back to where I needed to be. And he did that by sending in a disruptor, right? Somebody that I respect and that I trust to try and give me that nudge. Like, okay, like I had other signs, but I was still like, nope, not going back to Phoenix. Don't want to do it. Nope. But he sent in a disruptor, the same person that told me that I had the ability to do this, which was my first book. 29:11. For I have plans for you to prosper. And he brought me back here, the last place I wanted to be. And when I tell you, like, this is what y'all don't understand. Like, this is the book. This is the one that has the edits in it, right? So they send you a proof. When you do a book, they'll send you a proof, and then you have to go through and you make the corrections or whatever. And so this is the marked up copy. This is the original copy. Just so y'all think I'm not playing. I'm not playing right now. 2013 was when all this stuff was planted. Called and qualified. And people think that you have to have, you know, all these certificates or whatever. But if you're anointed and you're appointed and you're called to do something, you have a purpose to do it. You don't need a certificate. You got God on your side. Come on now. Come on now. Now, do I know what the next year, 2 years, 5 years is going to look like? Nope. Nope. But when I tell you that when I watched that video last night and all it said was marked, I don't even know. Like I said, the video was 3 years old. It wasn't something that was new. So I don't even know why it was on. I don't even know why it was on the feed. Because normally the stuff that I get is current stuff from Elevation. That was 3 years old. You tell me that message wasn't meant for me to see. Because when I watched that message, it brought all these pieces together. It brought them all together. So this message today, guys, part of our 31 days of prevention, like I said, it's always about motivation. So I hope that in some way, something that I said has motivated you to say yes to something that you've been procrastinating about, something that you've been maybe wondering, should I, shouldn't I? Maybe you've been holding back into your comfort zone. You've been trying to stay connected to people that you need to disconnect from. Sometimes, like I said, from Arizona to Dallas, that was separation from the comfort zone. From Dallas to Salt Lake, that was isolation. It was, God was all I had. And the video that I was doing talking about that period in time, I was talking about, like, I felt like I cried all of 2019. And I'm talking in the video about how, like, I don't even get down like that. But 2019 was really just, there was just a purge happening. And I recognized that that's what was going on, but I didn't understand why. But I just went with it. And I journaled and I cried. I journaled and I cried and I prayed and I meditated and, you know, all these things. Like God was all I had. Melo, don't you have tears, because I'm going to get emotional. But God was all I had in Utah. And then the pandemic, come on now. And before the pandemic, there was the earthquakes. What? Stop playing with me. I had God. Like, that's all I had in Salt Lake. And so then when I went back to Dallas, I had to take the lessons and the discoveries and the things that I learned about myself and my world and the people that I allowed to be close to me. And I had to act on some of those things, and I had to clean up some stuff, and I had to sort through and do some, again, you have to disconnect from some things. And everybody who's in your boat isn't rowing with you. And sometimes, this is what I learned in Salt Lake. I learned that sometimes, I learned a couple of things. I learned one about the disruptors and how God will send people who you trust to get you to say yes to things, right? But then I also learned that the people that are in your boat aren't necessarily rowing with you. They may be trying to take you to where they want to go, or they might be drilling holes. It's hard telling. But you have to be aware of the fact that what you're called to do and the plans God's made for you has nothing to do with them. Has nothing to do with them. And so sometimes you'll have people who you thought was going to ride with you, and then they're going to abandon you. And it's going to hurt in the moment. But then when you start seeing where you're going, you realize, whew, dodged a bullet on that one. Thank you, God. I see you. You knew they wasn't ready. You knew they couldn't go where you had planned for me. And so that's today's message, y'all. I just had to get on here while I was just feeling it. And, you know, I had made these notes for myself yesterday just because I was processing what I was learning in that video. I was processing what I was learning. And then when I saw that video a little bit ago in my memories, I was like, wow, freaking wow. God loves me like, whoa, bestie is right. How dope is that? How dope is that? But here's the newsflash. If y'all don't know, he loves you just like whoa too. It's just a matter of, are you willing to say yes? Are you willing to be obedient? Are you willing to give up sometimes the comforts in order for the uncomfortable to be able to manifest your greatness? Because I don't necessarily see my greatness. I don't necessarily see what I have to offer. But I'm willing to say yes, and I'm willing to bet on God. And I'm willing to bet on my faith. Because he calls me by the plans he has made for me. Other people call me by what I've been through. They call me by what I've done. And there's an old saying that says, I may have done the things you said I've done, but I am not who you say I am. I may have done the things that you say I've done, but I'm not who you say I am. God calls me by the plans he has made for me. And that's who I am. That's who I'm going to answer to. That's loving you like, whoa. So that's the end of my message for today. I love y'all immensely. I thank you for listening. As always, I only have one ask, and that's if you hear something, share something. So share this video out. You never know who's on your timeline, who needs a word, who needs some motivation, who needs some inspiration, who needs just that push to say yes, that push to be obedient, that push to say, okay, separation's scary, but it's not going to kill you. Isolation is intimidating, but you're going to be all right. Tears are okay, even though they're uncomfortable for you. You never know who needs to hear that. So please share the video out. Have an amazing day. Have a blessed day. As always, I say, stay well, stay safe, stay blessed, and most of all, stay healthy. Have an awesome day, you guys, and we'll talk to y'all tomorrow with another message from 31 Days in Prevention.